We are all sleep-talking, and we don't even know it. Ridiculous, you say, but it isn't. Less than 200 years ago, we still had slaves in Australia. But we came, through the process of cultural globalisation, to understand the cruelty and hypocrisy of treating other humans as slave labour. The first countries that abolished slavery slowly spread the message, and change arose as a result, as well as the peoples moving. Obviously, those aren't the only reasons, but in the end result, there was the shift of the cultural norm, a change in global culture. A big part of what has made me who I am today is my cultural background, which has surprisingly enough become less relevant in the face of this global cultural tsunami, which has redefined societal norms and expectations. But what is culture? Mark Peterson defines culture as a process of humans acting on ideas which they first learnt from others and had become embedded in material and social environments, which they tend to reproduce, habitualize, and pass on, unless circumstances encourage change, as the example here shows. I believe this to be true, and I am also of the belief that a big part of the cultural puzzle is globalisation. Globalisation is defined by Caselli in 2006 as having three categories: economic, political, and cultural. This is the first to define it, but that's who I chose. Petrovic defined globalisation as a process of growing interaction and interdependence between these economies, societies, and nations across large distances. This means that a change in how one local group can look at a certain topic or idea can and often is affected by something somewhere else in the world. Often this change comes about through the slow adoption of a certain idea by the group until it becomes the new norm or new accepted standard. This can be directly seen in my life, and in your life too most likely, considering that Australia is a relatively new country full of recent immigrants that haven't been in Australia for more than a couple of generations. This slow cultural shift can be observed in something as simple as what kids eat for lunch at school. Remember your packed lunch? Probably in a lunchbox or saran wrap. With a sandwich, right? Maybe a piece of fruit or a snack of some variety. A veritable bag of treats, in my observation. But in my dad's case, and as an immigrant to Australia with Ukrainian blood running so thick it's like honey, he instead for lunch got borscht. You've probably heard of borscht. It's beet soup, cold beetroot and garlic soup. And my grandma would make a big heaping pot of it at the start of a week. And that was my dad's lunch. Nobody were really my dad's friends. They called him KGB. Not a joke. Despite the fact that he spoke near perfect English, he just couldn't relate to them. Culturally, and in his free time, not at lunch either. That might have been because his breath stank, but you know, that's besides the point. People love to trade food, and certain foods hold almost a currency value, similar to the literal currency value of canteen food. If you had a packet of, say, tiny teddies or a fruit roll-up, the sky was the limits. You could trade all day. Whew. And eat just about anything you wanted. He was stuck, however, with cold beet soup from Monday to Friday. So for most of his primary school, he had very few friends. They thought he was the weird Russian with the garlic and beet breath. However, as he progressed through school, he became fine with people. Then I came along with the same deal, but instead it was cool that I had the cultural foods. I don't like beets, so I'd pimeni, Russian meat pies, far more popular with the kids. The point is that the cultural norm was directly affected by this globalization, and people learn it from when they are kids. It creeps and creates change that we don't notice until we examine the past, as in the slaves, as in the food culture, and what's accepted now. My dad didn't fit into the cultural norm of the traditional red soup, the lifeblood of Ukraine, borscht, but I did. By this globalization process, this diffusion of ideas and interweaving of norms and what is culturally acceptable. And this experience has shaped who I am as a person and what I put out into the world. Then we come to the internet. The ocean through which these waves of change and ideals pass through. It is the greatest vessel for change currently available anywhere. The biggest agents of change in this age of the internet are early adopters and influencers. Keep those in mind. The early adopters are those who first pose ideas, and they can be anybody, but they are usually experts or free thinkers. Always free thinkers. While the influencers are those who have a following, and by extension, make bigger waves in the ocean, particularly among their followers, who often act upon these new ideals, or at least consider them more so than a random stranger. Examining a personal situation again, I started a conspiracy club in high school, and would hold debates about contentious topics. One in particular is relevant here, the moon landing. Several times in the first year I held debates about the moon landing, and in every single one, I had people talk to me later saying I had made them unsure about their belief. They no longer were so steadfast in their belief, while others would say, I was an idiot for even suggesting that there was a debate to be had. The point is that I was changing some people's minds because I was close to them, and they would tell others what they had heard. But only their direct relatives and close people like friends. It wasn't going to spread that far. And this is what the internet does, except scaled way down. On the internet, I can have a debate with a whole forum of people, and one of those people may be an influencer, who then spreads this idea and lends credibility to the theory, which sparks debate amongst other influencers, meaning that thousands, possibly millions of people can hear about this through the process of early adopters reaching influencers via the internet. It's this spread, and then it hits a blow-up point and it blows up via these influencers. That's why they're so vital. This is the current process through which much cultural change and debate takes place. I enjoy playing the devil's advocate in particular in cases like this, because I agree that global culture creates a lot of homogenization, as stated by Ulrich Beck. I am an agent of globalization by putting my ideas out there on the internet and by trying to influence. What I've come to learn through my experiences, and those of the role models in my life, my cultural pillars, my parents, my friends, is that I'm an agent of globalization, particularly because I was born with the internet, which has become the cornerstone of global culture. Meaning that even unconsciously, because of how I've been acted upon by global culture, I've been putting out these ideas that tend towards the current and future global ethos. Have you been using the internet? Because that means you're also a sleeper agent for global culture. But don't despair. Is that such a bad thing?